Welcome to Budget Barometer here on NDTV. Every day we've been taking stock of budget expectations and assessing the probability of those expectations being realized in Budget 2017 when Finance Minister Arun Jaitley presents it on the 1st of February. This we've been doing in association with BMR and Associates, and today it's the turn of the defense sector analysis. Joining us is Gokul Chaudhary, Leader Direct Tax at BMR and Associates. Always a pleasure to have him on the show. Gokul, many thanks. Let's get straight to it. I could argue that 2016 has been a year of policy progress for the defense sector. Expand on that thought and tell me if you agree.
Well, there's no doubt that this government since 2014, when they came into power, have been doing a number of measures which have been, in the long term, very, very useful for this sector. Firstly, they brought out a number of amendments to the defense procurement policy, which is very good. They brought in 100% for investment from the private sector into this industry, which is again very good. And then they started liberalizing foreign direct investment into defense, which they brought in automatic up to 49% and then said, well, we can take it up to 100% if we are able to get state-of-the-art technology. So from a defense policy perspective, the government has been doing a number of things and which have been very useful.
How has that progressive policy yielded results on the ground, Gokul? I'm not asking for a critique, but just a sense of, has the policy progress translated into real investment?
I think when you look at defense manufacturing, it's a new industry. It's a sunrise industry. It's also one of those industries which can become a champion industry for India. But it needs a little bit of time for it to build up because this is not an easy industry. It's a very strategic sector. There are a number of rules and regulations. There are security concerns, there are strategic concerns, and therefore some of the build-up has been relatively slow. That said, most of the defense players recognize India, have been familiar with India, and are keen to build a footprint in India.
Now, again, a theoretical construct for the to-do list. Before we dive into the, taxes, direct taxes, indirect taxes, theoretically speaking, what can be done to move this forward in a substantial fashion?
I think a couple of things which is there. When they changed the policy in 2014, they followed it up with an FAQ, which is very useful because that made people able to interpret the policy. And when you're able to interpret the policy well, you're able to implement it quicker. I think if they were to follow up on having far more FAQs on relation to the policy, I think decision making will become a little easier. One is that part. The second part which is there is that there are some anomalies which are still there, which need to be ironed out. Most of the people in the defense sector have been made aware of these issues. And I think the important part is that some of the large contracts have been now issued out, whether it's a Rafale deal or the artillery contract, which have a massive offset program. And when we are able to start implementing those contracts and the offset, which is 30%, will start flowing in, that's when the SME sector will get extremely busy over the next few years.
Okay, so let's dive straight into the taxes now, shall we? Ahead of the budget, and I'm sure you find me a bit repetitive, but first what we do in our conversation is we put out the ideal wish list, and then we assess the probability of some of that coming through. So let's start with the ideal sort of list that industry would like to see addressed when it comes to the defense sector, specifically on direct taxes. And there are details here, Gokul. Let's take a moment to explain some of the more important details.
When we look at the details, there are a couple of aspects which are here. One, when you import goods into India, they are exempt from taxes in a major way as far as the defense sector is concerned. But when you import services, which is technology which is required, then there is a particular provision in the tax laws which gives an exemption from the levy or withholding taxes as long as the signatory is the government. And secondly, the government considers it to be in national interest. So therefore, import of services and import of technology has a certain framework. This is important because as India now moves towards a massive build-up for the Make in India, the import of technology is not just going to be by the government, but also by the defense PSUs. Therefore, the first thing that needs to happen is that the import of technologies and services by the defense PSUs will need to be amended in the law such that their import of the technology, their import of services has the same outcome, which is an exemption from withholding tax, as if these were being supplied directly to the MOD. This is one part which is there. It is an important part because I think as we move for indigenization, the import of technology and the import of services is going to become a far more important component. And I think the defense PSUs have an important role to play in the indigenization, and therefore their having the ability to give the exemption or their contracts to have the exemption is a very important play in here. The second part which is there is that in the last budget, the finance minister, to incentivize the Make in India program for the defense sector, brought in certain custom duties to be able to provide a level playing field and incentivize domestic manufacturing. But what that has led to is an anomaly. The anomaly is that we've got an inverted duty structure. What is this inverted duty structure? So if you look at the artillery, for example, it is when you import the components, you've got a 12% duty, and then you have the manufacture of the guns where the excise duty is only 6%. So you really have 12% input cost and only a 6% output duty. You got a log jam of your credits. It's a small technical issue, but you're losing money in the supply chain. So what can the finance minister do? Quite sensibly, either he can reduce the CVD that applies on the import of the components, or he increases the excise duty on the manufactured guns. Either way, we are able to then resolve the buildup of taxes in the contracts.
Okay. I just wanted to again refer to one or two things which I know that your research at BMR and Associates has thrown up. One is to perhaps enhance the FDI limit under the automatic route from 49 to 51. In percentage terms, that may not seem like much, but strategically, it's important to foreign investors. Expand on that, Gokul.
When we are talking about foreign investment coming to projects, we are wanting to have state-of-the-art technology-based projects. Now, most of these defense companies are subject to export controls in their home countries, which means that if you're a French defense company or you're an American defense company, you have certain restrictions on exporting technologies. However, those export regulations become easier to overcome if you're able to convince your home countries that you have control over the joint venture into which you're exporting such sensitive technologies. Hence, if you had 51% control of the joint venture in India, the export of sensitive technologies will become far easier and more efficient. Now, there's no denying the fact that the government of India is saying that, well, if you need 51%, you come, you apply to us, and then we will decide and we'll take you through the Foreign Investment Promotion Board. But our simple point is that insofar as this sector is concerned, it still requires industrial licensing for the manufacture of goods. And the government has defined the list of products for which industrial licensing is still required, which includes the defense sector. And hence, it's not a free-for-all. Hence, you can certainly have foreign investment up to automatic of 51% coming in, knowing very well that you have one more check and balance in the system through the issuance of the industrial license.
That's a very fascinating point, actually, Gokul, because there is adequate checks and balances, as you've described, and therefore this 49 to 51 would go a long way when it comes to export of sensitive, important technology from overseas countries. The other piece is to really build capacity in India. And I'm wondering what the taxation approach in this budget could do to really build, to really make in India. We've addressed some of the overarching themes. On the details, are there some things that still need to be addressed, done, to make sure that defense manufacturing in India seriously takes off?
I think one of the measures that the government has been talking about is to create an equivalent of a defense SEZ. And I think that's a very interesting idea, and it's a bold idea. Because if we are able to create such a framework in which we are able to then deal with all the other tax issues and isolate those tax issues, I think we'll be doing a great job. Because today, when we are importing 70-75% of our defense needs into this country, these products are not carrying any Indian tax cost in it. The minute you're going to do the Make in India and you're going to embed all of the Indian taxes into the value of the product, your value of the product will go up because of Indian taxes. And therefore, the whole purpose is to create a defense industry in India, create jobs in India, bring in the technology, and create the whole ecosystem around it, I think taxes should be given a little bit of a backseat for the next few years when the build-up of this industry takes place. And I think creating the defense SEZs could be one such way to go through this process.
Gokul, we're running out of time, which is why I wanted to get one last thought from you on, the SEZ idea, for example, when it comes to the defense sector. Is it an idea that's in flavor? What I'm asking is, what is the probability of some of what we've discussed coming through in this budget?
I think if we want to accelerate the Make in India for defense, this is a great idea to do. If we want to allow the Make in India program for defense to take its natural course, it's going to take a few more years, which goes back to your first question, how quickly can we move on in this space? And I think the more bold we are, the quicker we will be.
And you rate the likelihood of that happening as pretty high?
Well, the current finance minister did hold a defense portfolio for the first few months, if not the first full year. And I think he's conscious of that. He's also conscious of the fact that if he has to create jobs in this country, he has to create new industries in which manufacturing is core. And I think defense is one of those industries.
Well, Gokul, I know I was supposed to talk to you about the aerospace sector as well, but the defense conversation has been fascinating and all-encompassing. Many thanks for your time and insights here on NDTV. On that note, we're going to take a very quick break. When we return, we'll talk to Dheeraj Mathur, partner and leader, National Aerospace and Defense Practice at PwC. Catch that conversation. It's a continuum of the one we've just had.